Hello, and welcome to the Brave New Weed podcast. And now, here's your host, Joe Dolce.
Welcome to this episode of the Brave New Weed podcast, discussions of the post-prohibitionist era in cannabis. So tonight we have a great guest, Dee Dussault, who is the founder of Ganja Yoga.
Yeah, this is something, Joe, that you've been talking about for quite some time.
Well, I've been practicing yoga for a long time, like over 25 years. And I didn't really intentionally mix cannabis with yoga when I was younger. So I was in San Francisco a few weeks ago, and there was a class on a Thursday night, and I decided I was going to go.
How was it?
It was really unlike any other yoga class. Like typically you go into a yoga class, you put down your mat, maybe you nod at somebody, and that's it. You're in your own space. You're in your own little envelope, very self-absorbed experience. This, first of all, you walk in, there's a group of people sitting in the far corner, vaporizing, talking about edibles, maybe having a joint, relaxing, talking to each other. That was a really different experience. And then it also happened on a Thursday night, sort of end of week. And it was a relaxing yoga. I never got off my mat, basically. I laid down the whole time. It was really, it was a deep relaxation. I took a friend with me, and we're both fairly skeptical, cynical guys. And we both had a great time.
Yeah.
And we were both totally relaxed at the end. I mean, it made Friday seem like a struggle.
So I know that yoga comes in a lot of forms and a lot of varieties.
Yes.
You have your vinyasas, you have your ashtangas. Is the Ganja Yoga like a relaxing, restorative thing? It seems like it would be very hard to focus on a challenging set of positions.
This was not a vinyasa. This was it was called restorative yoga and end of week yoga. And I'm telling you, add a little ganja into your yoga, and you get a very good, relaxing experience.
Now,
I can't recommend it enough. I think it's going to take New York by storm.
Did you find that you were like more flexible?
It's not really like you're pushing the poses too hard. No, you're pretty, like all things with cannabis, you're pretty happy where you are.
Yeah, just finding that nice balance.
You're just happier being there, whether you're in a deeper pose or just, or not in that pose. It takes away that competitive edge, even our self-competitive edge. I've always found that true about cannabis.
Now that's really interesting what you say about competitive edge, because I know a lot of people who struggle with yoga. It's because you're in there with a room, and maybe on the other side of the room is somebody who is just like a human pretzel.
Yeah.
And that's very intimidating.
Yeah. In New York, they're all dancers. Right? Everyone in the yoga class is a former dancer, right?
Or they're a yoga teacher.
Or they're a yoga teacher training, exactly. In this one, it was a little more heterogeneous. As a matter of fact, the guy next to me snored the whole way. He never got off his mat. So I'm really excited to sort of bring this concept wider. And by the way, she has a book out called Ganja Yoga. It was published by Harper One. And it's a very good book. It's very reasonable. It has playlists in it. It has different ways of consuming, different ways of practicing. I thought it was full of wisdom for the modern era, I have to say.
All right. That sounds really cool. I can't wait to hear that conversation. Before we move on to our news, though, I would be remiss. We need to give a special shout out. Effective now, the episode that you're currently listening to, the Brave New Weed production family has expanded by one person. And our episodes now are being edited by Kyle Moore.
Thank you, Kyle.
Out of Denver, Colorado.
Yo, Denver.
Hey, Denver. I'm going to come visit you real soon. But we got to give a big thanks to Kyle for joining the Brave New Weed family, for hopefully elevating our production quality so that we can bring you, all of our listeners, a higher quality product week after week.
We're all about higher quality.
Indeed. How about with that, we move into the news.
So Matthew, the story that populated my inbox this week, was this story about the big bad pot monopoly. Did you read this piece?
I did. I read it after you sent it to me. I'm a little puzzled. I'm not exactly sure how to make heads or tails of it.
Let's tell. It was the scariest story in a way because it's what everybody in the weed world has been fearing for time immemorial. Really, that Monsanto or some big company like Monsanto or a smaller company will stealthily get in and somehow be able to patent the plant.
And it is terrifying, right?
Completely terrifying.
If they figure it out, so maybe we can explain a little bit of this. From what I understood of looking at the article, which we will link to and we will publish on all of our social media, there are like 6 mother plants.
6 mother strains. By the way, this article appeared in GQ.
Yeah.
Just this week it came out. Yeah. And the idea of it is that the age of artisanal marijuana is already on its way out, and the era of corporate cannabis is just about to begin. And that's regarding the fact that they are saying that there are some companies out there who are trying to patent the plant, okay? Somehow own the intellectual property of this commodity.
Right. Does this work, Joe?
I don't know. I am not a patent lawyer. Obviously, I'd be a much wealthier man if I am. It seems inconceivable to me that you can patent a plant with over 200 to 600 compounds, some of which are not even identified yet.
Sure.
That seems a very difficult thing. So what I did is I called a very smart guy. I called Greg Gerdeman. Greg was a professor of neuroscience at Eckerd College, and I met him years ago. He explained many things to me, and he's now the chief science officer of a grow in Florida. All right, and he knows some of the folks involved in this article. And I thought, rather than you and me trying to make sense of this, because it's beyond any of us, it may be beyond Greg also, but let's talk to him. Let's get him on the phone in Florida and have a discussion.
That sounds fantastic.
Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Okay, so with us tonight, we have Greg Gerdeman, who is the Chief Scientific Officer of Three Boys Farm in Ruskin, Florida, just south of Tampa. Hey, Greg.
Hi, Joe.
How long have you been Chief Science Officer of Three Boys?
Well, not really very long. I've been working with them as a consultant for some time, but I just resigned a tenured faculty job as a professor of biology at Eckerd College here in St. Pete. And really, I just started as a full-time position as Chief Scientific Officer this summer.
And do you ever think you've made a disastrous mistake going from well, I mean, I want to know, going from the relative security of academia into the wild
tenured job. A lot of people go through a PhD dreaming about a tenured job, and I did just walk away from it. Well, when I see things like the possibility of patent wars and gobble ups, and cannabis as an industry is so volatile, to say the least. But no, this is really where my career has led. I've studied this medicine for 20 years, and I've had jump-off opportunities into the industry before, and it's never felt like absolutely synchronous right timing for me to be at a local place, a place that appeals to me as a biologist because of a mission for environmental sustainability and ecological stewardship. It's a rain harvesting farm, solar-powered farm, low carbon footprint, which cannabis should be, and for the most part, really, really is not.
Yeah,
so I'm just nothing but excited right now.
That's great. If I was a multimillionaire, I'd be investing in your farm, Greg.
Yeah,
that sounds so right.
Sounds amazing.
So right.
Well, there are people who do come out of the woodwork. Thankfully, I'm spared from most of that, but it's interesting. All the craziness in cannabis, and people from all over the world are kind of tripping over themselves to put money into it.
I know.
It's still federally Schedule 1 and illegal.
It's interesting you bring up the craziness.
Because that's what we're talking about tonight. So let's talk about the Monsantoization of cannabis.
Did you coin that word?
No, I just wrote it down and I'm trying to pronounce it. The article wasn't really saying that there's a company like Monsanto trying to really mess with the genetics of the plant, but it was trying to say that these companies were trying to get the patent on the plant. Is that your reading on it, Greg?
Yes, mostly, and the comparison to Monsanto is because they have been a real model, and the company everyone loves to hate for having these kinds of patents on food and things like terminator seeds and controlling food crops so that even subsistence farmers have to buy from them what until this generation was just nature.
Yes.
And I think that's the worry and the reason why it gets applied to
cannabis.
Mysterious companies being highlighted by that investigative piece.
So the $1 million question is that what's going on?
Well, for the listeners, I know you guys didn't invite me on as an expert in the back curtain big lawyer deals of cannabis. it's certainly something different. I mean, I think there are similar motives of control amongst factions. I mean, it's just so much of a money grab going on in cannabis, and I wouldn't point it necessarily to any of the companies and individuals named in that piece, some of whom I know and respect greatly. But there are very influential and wealthy interests that are keeping their cards very, very close to their chest. And when they've got things like patents that ostensibly could cause great harm to people trying to make a career out of something they've always made a career out of, and so far, I think it's human nature to get a little fearful that it's nefarious.
I think it's more than human nature. We live in the modern world. But Greg,
right.
How possible is it to really patent this plant of over 200, 600, depending on who's counting, compounds? How possible is it?
Again, I'm not an expert in the patent law. I don't understand it, frankly, and it's not, when it comes to patenting a natural product, living plant, it's something that is, in my view, a Commonwealth resource. A good friend of mine, I think also, Dr. Sunil Agarwal, is long been a friend of mine who's resonated on this idea that the cannabis plant is a Commonwealth resource. It's been here longer than any of our recorded history. That goes without saying, because our earliest written, tablets were medical tablets that were, medical sources, that many of which show that there was already a rich history of cannabis. It's older than all of our societies, and you can say, how is it done? Well, legally, that's societal structure that says it can be done. How is it right? I have a hard time with that. I mean, I'm not certain technologically enabled processes and methods. Makes sense that there's patent and return on your investment in research dollars. But to say that a certain kind of cannabis or something as straightforward as an alcohol distillation, I mean, plants have been distilled for fragrances and fermentation and whatnot for who knows how long. And this plant has such a bouquet, a phenotypic diversity. The genetics is so diverse, it's very hard to say. Even something that hasn't existed commercially in the United States or Western Europe, how do you know that wasn't used traditionally? But in patent law, I know that doesn't matter. I mean, like stevia is a natural extract that, like I think down in Argentina, there were traditional groups that have used that as a sweetener forever and ever. And I don't know which company did it. I don't remember the story, but that's a plant. It was captured up and it was used as a sweetener. And the native peoples who, gave it get nothing in return for it. And now they would have to pay patents if they used it.
That's the problem with all this. Yep, that's the problem. Now listen, the article talks very specifically about some companies we all know, NAPRO, particularly Phytex, and we both know some of the principals or who have been in Phytex. And Phytex has been operating very secretively. Can you talk to me a little about your understanding about what they're trying to do with the plant?
Well, my understanding of Phytex, again, I'm not an inside to that, but
neither of us are. We know this.
And Dr. Ethan Russo is someone who's a dear friend. He's been a mentor to me, and I think is not only a rare visionary in cannabis, but just a truly wonderful person. And Phytex, I don't know how the business structure got started, but their goal has been to, as I understand it, help to develop medicinal plant-based therapeutics or other products that are utilizing the diverse kinds of cultivars of cannabis. They refer to them as chemovars, as chemical varieties, and I am someone who agrees very much with Dr. Russo that we should try to influence the language away from strains of cannabis, because strain is something that refers to infectious agents like bacteria and viruses, and cannabis, for some reason, we refer to it as though it's a virus more than a botanical product.
Interesting.
And that's what commerce and the industry has done. I mean, the culture has embraced the word strain. I just think it's weird. But anyway, Phytex has been developed. They've had a breeding program in combination with another company, NAPRO Research, very solid, respectable scientists, brilliant scientists, frankly, that have been working on breeding programs to develop the kinds of cannabis chemovars, as they say, varietals that don't really seem to exist, at least in in American commerce. Things that are low in THC or high, but have different terpene profiles.
Just wanted to explain for a second that a terpene is the smell molecule of cannabis, right? And in the typical varieties that we'll smell, which are pretty powerful, there's about 0.5%. And from my understanding, they're trying to develop terpenes that are high, like 8%. That's a significant leap forward. Is that your understanding?
My understanding is that they do have quite a number of varieties that have been bred over the years, starting with some very special genetic stock that I won't, go into.
Okay.
Because I'm privy to some information but I don't think,
That's why we're talking to you, Greg.
But they've presented this at scientific meetings. Recently at the ICRS meeting, the International Cannabinoid Research Society meeting, have an abstract. They have varietals that have very high percentage relative to other, aromatic compounds, the essential oils, the fragrances. I would freaking love to be in a grow and smell that stuff. And not only that, but they have bred for plants that have fingerprints of these aromatic terpenes that are not only abundant, but they are a bouquet that's unlike most of what's out there. For example, the terpene beta-myrcene that can have a very sedating effect. I think is largely responsible for the kind of knock you out high that people get when they consume too much THC. They interact in ways that people have good ideas about, but are largely conjecture, really.
Hey, just as an aside, you dropped the term beta-myrcene, which those of us that are kind of in the know who have been informed with that might understand. Can you just explain that from a lay person standpoint? How can one identify?
One of fragrances.
What's it smell like?
It's one of the terpenes. What does myrcene smell like? Well, it's in hops, for one thing. So it's like a strong hoppy IPA beer might have that kind of myrcene fragrance. And to be clear, I'm jumping into a world where I'm going to be directing cannabis. I'm working closely with cannabis cultivation, directing extraction and quality control lab, hiring people that have more hands-on experience than I do. I'm at the cusp of much more experience that I've had. But what I know about myrcene is, without giving a really strong first-hand experience of what it smells like, is that it has these sedating properties, and that most cannabis that you find in the so-called recreational adult use black market, most cannabis out there is relatively high in myrcene.
Yeah.
Breeding plants that are really low in that and really high in flavor compounds, aromas like pinene and limonene, citrusy, piney, and other compounds that are more floral and as Ethan has said for many years, may be more uplifting, may have more antidepressant properties, maybe more of what we refer to as people call sort of the uplifting sativa effect. It may be due to some of these other compounds, and having plants that are really robust in those and low in myrcene with a variety of cannabidiol and THC ratios, well, there's just so much opportunity to, if these cultivars become available and to the extent that they do, those who have those varietals will be able to conduct some clinical studies and observational studies that may answer really interesting questions about which varieties are good for what. Because going into the cannabis as medicine world, well, everybody, all the docs, all the people, everybody wants to know, hey, I've got Crohn's disease, what's the best strain?
Yeah.
I've got migraine, what's the best strain? And again, I don't like the word strain, but out on the internet you can find lots of answers, but most of them are really not scientifically valid or verified, and you can get people saying pretty opposite things, or they can say, dude, Blue Dream's the greatest for that. But when you look at the genetics and the profiles of what are labeled Blue Dream in different states and different dispensaries, sometimes they're wildly different, but they have been labeled that by breeders or been mislabeled. The so-called strain names are pretty poor indicators of what you're actually getting. Yeah,
they're pretty fallible, I think. But is this they're trying to patent these high levels of terpenes? Is that a clearer understanding of what the company's trying to do?
But, I don't want to go too far into saying what I think the company is trying to do. Again, I really respect the collaboration of NAPER Research and Phytex. I have no insight into, the money guys and the lawyers that run things. And, so I don't know what the intentions are, because one thing that does seem pretty clear is they've kept their cards really close. I mean, I haven't even really studied the patents. I think one of the patents is like basically that they have the rights to these kinds of varieties with these unique fingerprints, and there are questions out there. Is it unique? Is it really not occurred before? The answer may be that they haven't. And if they've occurred in ancient history, does that matter when it comes to U.S. patent law? I don't know.
So, Greg, how scary is this? I mean, you and I both know that there are very few venture capitalists in the world who are really true altruists, right? I mean, they're not doing this. They're not doing this to give stuff away, right?
Well, in that case, why even seek the patent? Why not just roll the information into the public domain?
Well, maybe there's a noble intent to seek the patent and then defend it from some other more, greedy company. But, of course, venture capitalists seek a return on their capital. I mean, they want to see something come of it.
They do.
And those are broad strokes. I would imagine they will flex this in some way. And but it's I don't have a crystal ball in the future. I didn't predict 8-10 years ago. I didn't predict Colorado. I didn't predict things. And when I moved to Florida, 8 years ago, I thought, well, I'm moving to the last state in the country that's going to legalize things.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And it's not true. We've got a pretty interesting, there's big problems with what's going on in Florida, but I'm in it, and I believe that a lot can be done of it. And I sure don't want this massive undertaking that I'm involved in to get shut down. I mean, I'm open to, very interested in what's going on with those companies named. I mean, all I can say is that people that I know that are involved in those, in that article, in this group of interlocking, they are people that I have great respect for. So, again, I don't know the real string pullers when it comes to money and vision, but and I think if the federal government changes scheduling to say Schedule 2, it will become sort of a big pharma game.
Mm-hmm.
And I respect GW Pharmaceuticals too, but I wouldn't be surprised if them flexing their patent rights becomes
sure they're all going to. Hey, Greg, when this article came out, my inbox was lighting up all day.
Oh yeah,
was yours?
Me too.
Yeah,
it was, and people are really reactive to it. Hence the journalistic value of calling them up. There were pretty loaded words talking about sort of I think the word murky was referred to these shadow. It was very shadowy, murky figures and all this. It is a big money game going on, and I don't resonate with all of that. And I don't really, ultimately, if any company, and there are other groups that are sort of flexing would-be patents, and small-time people who are flexing would-be patents for cultivation methods and this. And, all I can say is if your motivation is to make your business model of getting the right patent lawyer and the right idea first, and then suing companies weaker than you, or getting payoffs because of your so-called intellectual property, it's not how I would like to spend my life. I don't respect the strategy.
On that note, I have a hypothetical for you, if you wouldn't mind playing along. Let's say, knowing all your work and all your research and everything that you're up to, I come knocking on your door one day and I can produce that I have the patent for like the landrace mother strain. And I can show that the work that you have been doing contains, a minimum of 25% of genetic similarity to the strain that I have the patent for. And now I'm banging on your door for a licensing fee. As a scientist, as a researcher, how would you position yourself to defend against that?
Well, one thing is kind of the genetic model that was in that article, for example, the stuff that, for example, Phylos Bioscience, that's a company Malcolm Holmes is with, who was in that article.
Yes.
And I don't think he was caricatured in a very nice way. Medicinal Genomics has this project, Canopedia. They're collecting genetics, and people who have what they think, there's something ironic about the way you phrase that question. Like, I've got the patent on this landrace, because the landrace is the heirloom variety. That's a reference to the more pure genetics that predate all of this green rush grab. So
exactly.
Have a patent on that. It's frustrating how you could. Let's just embrace something better about the democratization of medicine that this traditional historical medicinal plant, a crown gem of medicinal plants, can do for us. But in answer to your question, I mean, if I've got something special, I'm gonna get it sequenced. I'm gonna have our stuff. If we have our hands on some interesting seeds, and we're gonna pop them, and we're gonna see what we've got, and we're gonna sequence them, because we want to. I want to be intelligently, molecularly based on breeding programs, and I also want to be able to have a record of that. Encrypt the crap out of it and keep it protected from people. But if that would-be entrepreneur comes in and says, "Oh, by the way, I have your genetics," or I pick up the Monopoly card and says, "Oh, your IP is held by a mysterious shadow company." One strategy is to say, "Well, here's my genetics, and we had it sequenced here, and we've got provenance on this seed that goes back to here. So you're going to prove to me that you came up with that de novo?" And the same thing with people who say, "Hey, we got a patent on extracting cannabis." Really? Because did you come up with that on your own? I was in conversation with principals in GW Pharmaceuticals in the late 90s, and not like I'm playing a card like, "Oh, I was involved, I know those guys," but I was in scientific meetings and talking to them, and I was talking intelligently about using CO2 extraction to isolate and enrich and distill bioactives from cannabis 20 years ago. So if somebody has a patent, and there is one floating out saying, "Hey, we've got a patent on extracting cannabis, we thought of it," my answer would be like, "Well, I can show a pretty solid strain of evidence that at least I was intellectually talking about this thing with other people before your patent was filed." So, but it's a question for lawyers, really. And what I really hate is that this becomes a big fat lawyer game. And that's where, money is made, and it's a war of attrition, and it makes cannabis a business that only big rich boys can play. And that's not how the medicine evolved.
That's not where we wanted to go. That's not
where I wanted to go.
Nope.
Okay, good. Well, we're going to hold that on the record.
Hold that note, okay? Greg, thanks so much for talking to us. We're going to be in touch again in the future. When
I sell out, you'll be like, "Oh, man, I got you on tape, man."
We got it, man.
We got you. Tape. Yeah, exactly. Stay poor, Greg. Take care. Thanks so much.
Best
okay.
of luck. Thank you.
Matthew, a few months ago, a book came across my desk called Ganja Yoga. And I sort of rolled my eyes and thought, what's next? Can this really be? But I opened it and I read it. And I actually read it all the way through in one sitting because it was full of wisdom and clever bits and a nice way of integrating cannabis into the practice of yoga. It even had some great playlists to accompany. So when I was in California last, I stopped in on Dee Dussault, the author of the book, and the woman who actually coined the phrase Ganja Yoga and has spent a good number of years putting together moves and practice that really make sense when combined with cannabis. The vibe was good and the practice was really relaxing. So this is my interview with Dee Dussault when I was in San Francisco.
I read the intro a long time ago, and then I just had to put it down. I was so busy. But
Isn't it nice?
I'm planning on launching a Ganja Yoga teacher training for people who are already yoga teachers, and I want to have a list of texts that they read before entering the program to have a history of prohibition. And so yours is one of the ones I'm considering. Yeah,
Great.
Whatever just sort of gets the yoga teacher this is how bad prohibition actually is and how good cannabis actually is.
Yeah, and also what new things can be done with cannabis. The end of my book, do you like the smell of that?
I do.
Isn't that incredible?
Beautiful. Yeah, so floral.
It is so, yeah.
Almost like citrus, but like a buttercup. I don't know, I'm not good at flavor notes.
Well,
but
it's called koala because koalas eat eucalyptus leaves.
Oh, okay. So.
And that, to me, had a lot of eucalyptus.
I thought it was more citrus, but you're right, it is eucalyptus. Thank you.
Let's try it.
That's
I mean, I
great.
want you to try it.
grind
I want
up.
your opinion. Definitely. I would definitely grind her up, though. Yes, that's the very nice thing about being in California. I mean, somebody had said to me, every city has its question. In New York, it's what label you're wearing. In California, it's what strain are you smoking.
Totally.
In San Francisco, anyway.
Totally.
And I thought, that's sort of quite nice, actually. Quite nice. And I thought that was very nice last night, that people gathered first before the class began.
Right.
It feels to me that even though California's had some sort of status for 20 years, people still need a community to gather in. Do you find that?
Excuse this.
What's that?
Sticky
Your
noise, yeah.
vaporizer is coming across. Your grinder is
There we
coming
go.
apart.
Yeah, no, a lot of people come and they say, I think even last night there was a guy who'd never got stoned in a group
Two
before,
of them.
right? Oh, two people said that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I never heard of such a thing.
Yeah, that's wild to me. Like, I get high by myself, but this is my first time to do it in public. And instead of going to a dispensary or like a vape bar,
Going to a yoga
or
class.
a hemp con or whatever, that kind of thing, go to, there's a yoga class. That seems like a good vibe to do it, right?
Well, it is a good vibe. It's a safe vibe to do it. It was one of the things I liked also was the extraordinary diversity, and I don't use the word lightly, but just the age range,
Totes,
the
yeah.
race range, the men and women thing, right? Because most stoner events are guys, and most yoga events, are women.
Totally.
That's the way it goes, right?
We average 51% men, slightly more men than
In
women.
Ganja Yoga.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Based on
interesting?
like the Eventbrite, they can tell you kind of who's
Yeah,
who. So it's pretty much 50-50, which is awesome because that means a ton of men are getting into yoga that may not have otherwise, right? Like to me, that's just. But if you look at my marketing, like my Instagram and my personal website, it's a lot of imagery of women, and like I'm gearing it
is.
to women
I know.
as the woman cannabis user, and yet we're still attracting so many men, which is also great. Like
know,
I
it's
want
interesting.
both, right?
Yeah, I think it's interesting.
I'm actually gonna grab my hemp wick. I'm such a purist. If you're gonna do it, you gotta do it right.
What's a hemp wick?
Oh, it's just like a piece of hemp twine dipped in beeswax.
Oh,
but
to
instead-
light?
Yeah.
So no butane. Mm-hmm.
Might as well.
Why not? It's for the pure experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Good taste.
So it also occurred to me that when I was in college, that's when I started doing yoga. I've been practicing for a long time, and I used to smoke and go to yoga class, but there was nothing structured.
Right.
Right? And I like the way yours, even though it was a really gentle class last night, restorative yoga. I mean, beyond restorative yoga, really.
Right.
But I like the structure you gave to it. I thought that was very nicely
Like
done.
the
How
whole
intentional
evening-
are you about that?
Like the whole evening structure?
Yes, the whole
Yeah.
evening and the class itself.
The class, there's not a lot of structure. Sometimes in opening circle, people name off body parts that they want to work on, so I'll integrate them. I don't come with a plan. Every class is, at the Thursday restorative, is mostly floor work. We do one transition up to either an all fours or a sitting.
I know.
The rest is floor.
I did not get off the mat. I was very well
Exactly,
aware of that.
exactly.
The
The
guy
Wednesday-
next to me was snoring. Your
Oh,
doorman.
totally. Yeah, he
snored the whole
always
way.
snores
Okay.
every week. Yeah, he's the snore man.
The doorman and the snorer.
The Wednesday class we do, it's more conventional hatha. So we do like a downward dog or a warrior, or it's still really all levels, quite easy.
But you
or
keep it simple.
Keep it simple, yeah.
Because people lose their balance.
I just really want to attract that all levels audience, and yeah, cannabis can definitely impact balance.
For me.
To
For
the
you
negative.
as
yes,
well?
Yes. So it's humbling.
All right, so how long have you been doing this for?
8 years teaching.
Oh, it's a long time, Ganja
Ganja
Yoga.
Yoga. Mm-hmm.
And was there a following in the beginning?
There wasn't. No, I was doing the classes monthly, and the very first class didn't even have a single person come.
You were alone in a room doing it.
That's right. Yeah.
What was the thought that I should do this? Like other people might like this.
Yeah, well, I had just graduated my yoga teacher training, so not Ganja Yoga, and a month later opened a yoga studio, and I was teaching Hatha Yoga as per the training. So really,
Here in San Francisco?
it was in Toronto, where I'm from. And so when I launched that yoga studio, I launched the cannabis enhanced yoga portion, and I talked to my teacher about it. I said, look, I've been doing yoga since I was 15. It's so over a decade sober. I've just recently got into weed. I got into weed late in life, in my late 20s. I find it totally enhances lots of life, especially yoga. What do you think? Do you give your approval? Do you think it's a bad idea? Is it a hindrance? Like, I feel guilty. No yogis are talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, am I going down the path of Maya and addiction and, And she's really cool. She herself doesn't use cannabis or any substances. She's more of the pure Hindu kind of thing. But she said we all have our own unique path, and it's definitely been used
It definitely has
by
been.
other yoga practitioners, many of whom wrote some of the original yogic texts. So, if it feels right and you're doing it mindfully, and that this could be your path, it really could be the path, the herbal path.
So how did you explore it? Like, how did you find? Was there a foundation to this, or was this just something coming out of your own brain at this particular moment? Did you read? Did you travel? Did you talk to people? Did you get a ton of resistance?
Yeah, those are all great questions. I didn't know it was a thing at all. I mean, when she told me it's been done by other yoga practitioners, I actually didn't know she meant historically. Like,
oh, you didn't know that?
No,
okay.
I had no idea of the history. And then when I started to poke around, I saw the work of Chris Bennett, who writes about the history of cannabis and religion, sort of more generally. But he has a book called Cannabis and the Soma Solution. So he's a big advocate for this idea that the ancient Vedic Soma was cannabis. Some people think it was mushrooms and other things, but his argument's really strong. So I started to read that stuff and kind of felt a bit more of a validation for my own, like, it's my own personal practice at first, and I wouldn't need the historical validation, but having it really helps. Like, now it's not just my subjective experience, that it makes my practice yummier and trippier and more interesting and deeper.
Different levels of thought, and different people thinking about it, right?
It doesn't mean I get stoned for every yoga practice, but it does enhance the practice for me. So what I saw historically, that was the thing too. And then, in 2009, there were far fewer stories about the health benefits. Right. I knew it was like good for glaucoma, maybe some cancer. Like we didn't really think of it as a medicine. I was coming more from the altered states, shamanic. Mysticism side of things, not so much the health side. But now, of course, it's health, it's recreational, it's mystical, it's kind of a mixture of all, Yeah,
I do. So did you get a lot of opposition from the somewhat righteous yoga community?
No,
I did.
You did?
Oh, I asked certain yoga studios I practice in if I could come and give a talk. Oh, and they said no.
About the wellness benefits of cannabis?
This was in New York. Yeah, I wanted to talk about modern world of cannabis. What does it mean today? How can you use it to your benefit? Right?
And they said no.
They said no.
Yeah.
Some of the reasons were odd. Some of the reasons were, no, we have people in recovery who go to this studio and they would find it objectionable. I was like, well, they don't really have to come if they find it objectionable. And by the way, I know people in recovery who use cannabis to a positive result.
Right.
They didn't want to hear that, really. It was interesting. I think yoga, like anything, can be very religious, and I use religious sort of in a pejorative way. Dogmatic, yeah. And
no, I haven't talked to people and actually had any criticism, in terms of dialogue. And I haven't seen a lot online necessarily. There's some, but there's not a lot. Yoga Journal did a very brief story, maybe around 3, 4, 5 years ago, very, very small, but it was on the negative side. Like they said something like cannabis yoga, maybe just a fad, or like they treated it like it was a similar to.
Are you a fad?
Am I a fad?
I think you might be a fad.
I'm an 8-year fad.
Are you a fad?
Yeah, how long do fads usually last?
Oh, I don't know. 8 years is more than a fad.
Yeah, I have to say. So I'm waiting for their better exposition. I'm looking forward to that.
I think they should come back.
Yeah.
Okay, but something else was interesting last night. One of the women in the group said that she thought you should bring it to Silicon Valley. And I thought, you know what? If I was Dee's business partner, I would make her go to Silicon Valley. This is a must-do, right?
Totally.
This is a no-brainer.
Totally.
Are people asking you now for Ganja Yoga? Let's talk.
Oh, all over the place. Yeah, totally. Like, I'm not one to travel. I don't know how to drive, so that has to be a really good deal for me to go somewhere. But I've been to Portland and taught a couple of times, and to LA, and I would definitely go to Silicon Valley. Because I also have a private,
practice, right?
Practice. So if people want private classes and tantra yoga or sex coaching, so. Of course, I want to have Ganja Yoga exposed to as many people as possible, so that they come and enjoy the other parts.
Well, you said 2 interesting words just now: sex coaching, and can you explain to me what you do for sex coaching? By the way, I met somebody the other night in a bar, as it were, and she wants to become a love coach.
Oh, okay.
And I had never heard the term love coach.
Nor have I. Yeah.
I thought it was a lovely word, and a lot of men I know and women. Could really probably benefit from the idea of love coaching.
Yes.
Don't you think?
Totally.
I could.
Totally.
Could you?
I think I probably have areas where I could improve.
Well, let's talk about sex coaching.
Sex
though.
coaching, yeah.
What is it?
So I think of myself as a sex and relationship coach, but it's I work with singles as well as people in relationship, and it's coaching around any aspect of sexuality that the person has an issue with. So I often work with men, for example, who have lower libido due to stress, or premature ejaculation due to stress. Pretty much all of these are due to stress, among other things.
What other issues?
Men are usually things related to the penis, whether it's difficulty maintaining or getting an erection, and then for women it's even just feeling sexual or prioritizing it. Couples just going to cuddles as the default and not initiating and not keeping the passion alive in longer relationships.
Yeah, how do you deal with that? It's a huge look. The problem of desire and living together is a really big problem, right? Living together with somebody, it's a desire killer, right?
Too much intimacy can definitely be a desire
It's
killer.
too much togetherness.
It's too much togetherness. There's no other,
I think.
right?
There's
Yeah,
no,
totally.
It's a lot of, I don't know how they did it in the old world. I think they all worked harder and slept more and just had
Right.
more shit to do
Time
to
apart.
occupy them,
Totally,
right?
yeah.
Time apart.
Yeah,
How do you contend with that through yoga? It's a big issue.
Yeah. We expect a lot from our partners nowadays too. Like we want them to be our best friend and our soulmate and our confidant and our therapist and our all that stuff. So
Too much.
It's just we expect we're under resourced for one another.
That's one way of looking at it.
So
Huh?
I do help to encourage people to tap into their own sexuality, irrespective of their partner. Like for women, just slowing down. When you get out of the shower and you're putting your moisturizer on, to feel your moisturizer on your skin like you're worshiping the goddess. That you're a divine creature and you're giving yourself that self-care. You're remembering that you have a body, because we're all living above the neck because of our computers. We're all so cerebral, right? So just even tapping into your skin and your body, taking a breath, smelling the fragrance of the oil, that's just one kind of practice I might give someone as homework if they're feeling like, I haven't had sex in several weeks and
No
I
desire.
don't even desire it,
Yeah.
really. I just know I probably ought to,
Undesirable.
That's just one thing.
But what else do you have couples do? Like
Yeah,
in
so
a
things-
yoga.
like partner yoga, things
partner
like that.
yoga, what
Yeah,
do they
exactly.
do?
So if couples are coming in together, even partner hatha yoga. So I'm not talking about acro yoga, which is quite challenging and looks really cool on Instagram pictures. And many people probably lack the strength.
You're talking about acrobatic yoga?
Yeah, I'm not talking about that.
You're not
Yeah,
talking about
yeah, I'm not. So I'm not talking about when sometimes when people hear partner yoga, they think of those really acrobatic, intense, kind of more intermediate and advanced level stuff. This is all levels hatha that you would do with your partner. So say a sitting spinal twist, you can arrange it so that your backs are touching, and now you're both twisting and you're kind of in it together, right? And you start to synchronize the breath. So you're harmonizing, your prana, or in yoga it's called the prana, but you're harmonizing your energies and getting on the same wavelength. So even just 2 or 3 or 5 minutes of just that one move, you turn and face each other, and now it's, how was your day, honey? And you're just
You're
a
more
little
tuned to. It's more like a tuning process,
Tuning
isn't
in.
it? It's not a Viagra jolt.
not that practice, but there are some Viagra jolts. So there are the more kind of like sexy breathing, ecstatic breathing,
In tantra,
hip movements.
in a tantra
yeah.
thing? In a tantra class.
Yeah.
And do you use that as I'm sorry, you're a
sex coaching.
You're a sex coach.
Totally, yeah, right. So if they're looking for more the intimacy and the connection, it would be more of the partner hatha yoga, and even that's good foreplay, even for people looking for the more sexy poses.
Tell
you want
me
to start
an example
somewhere.
of hatha yoga foreplay.
Oh, I just mean like the partner twist, say, that in a way that's a foreplay move you would want to do with your partner before you do the sexy breathing and hip sexy tantra moves, right? You don't want to just show up and all of a sudden we're you're not going to feel like you're really there with it, because just a moment ago you were checking Facebook or at work, and now you're supposed to be doing this like hardcore sexy stuff. It's just too much for people. So transitions, right? So my sessions are 2 to 3 hours long.
They are.
So that you have a lot of time to do what we'll call the partner hatha, the sensuality, not sexuality, but the more sensual, the more intimacy, and then transitioning to, clothing on, but more, you could call it yogic making out, or, there's some humping or some hip gyrations to awaken the pelvis. And, we sit so much, so we have a lot of stagnation in the hip. So doing repetitive pelvic movements to draw blood flow in, oxygenated blood, getting more, awareness of the tissues.
What's the cannabis component?
So, cannabis heightens sensitivity.
Of course. How are you using it? Is that what you're
It's optional. People don't have to use it, but
Oh,
they're
I see.
welcome to. Yeah. So I always, I get some couples who are not at all interested. But then if they are, I can provide education about the various, methods of consumption, and what they might want, if they have like any questions and
Have
stuff
you
like
noticed edibles working more than inhalants, for example?
Everybody is so different in what they like.
I know.
Some people just like to smoke a joint because it's a little
I
old
know.
school,
I
and they
know.
don't want any of the modern technology.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
So I try to feel them out without pushing any one thing. I'll do any type. I like all.
Well,
of
I
it.
love an edible for intimacy and
yeah.
sex. I just
Oh,
think
yeah.
it dissolves a barrier that,
Totally.
more than inhaling.
Totally.
I've noticed anyway.
I have to say I agree with you. Edibles are my favorite too for like arousal if the dose is right.
And have you used cannabis-infused oils as sexual lubricators and enhancers?
Yeah.
What do you find?
Well,
because I've heard a lot of mixed reports.
Yeah.
I've tried them with mixed results.
Yeah, me too. I'm a little skeptical, in part because they're just so expensive. You could make your own cannabis infused.
No, I think you could just use any oil.
Easily.
Any coconut infused cannabis with cannabinoids is going to work.
Yeah, totally. So there are many. You want a food grade topical. You don't want any petroleum weirdo thingies in it or anything you wouldn't put in your mouth. But yeah, you could. Yeah, any and
a nicely extracted oil.
Yeah, exactly.
Extracted oil, and you've got it.
Yeah,
and it doesn't have to be $80. They're ridiculous.
So.
But what are the results though? Have you noticed?
Here's my thought, and so I've tried it, and I can't say I had any result at all.
Most women I know say no result.
The act of putting oil on my vulva is arousing. It does something. You're paying attention to your genitals. So anything that has people touching their genitals, or women putting, I think this is awesome. I love that it's a sexual product for women, a cannabis sexual. I support the idea behind it, but I just simply think that, first of all, you could make your own, but second of all, if we're putting cannabis topicals on our skin to decrease inflammation, but I want increased blood flow to the genitals.
Yes.
So I'm not sure if blood flow and inflammation are exactly the same thing, but I'm just curious exactly how the mechanism works. That it would decrease.
But here's how I understand it, and I this is again purely suppositional, is that because the mucous membrane, either in the anus or in the vagina, is so soft and so close to the blood, right? That it's not the area that's getting affected so much; it's the uptake into the bloodstream.
Got it. Yeah, like the Epsom salt baths is a similar
for women.
Thing,
right?
That or men too. I mean, up the anus, and then
it
it's
doesn't
like,
really go.
Oh, really?
It doesn't really do anything for men.
I've had male clients get
seriously
turbo baked from it, like turbo body buzz from it.
Okay, I've never had that experience.
Okay,
but maybe I'm not doing it right.
I'd put more in. Sit longer.
We're gonna have to re-examine how I'm sitting.
Truthfully, I don't have a bathtub, so I haven't had a chance to try it yet. But I did give it to a guy with body pain,
and he had good experience.
I mean, for him, it was like almost like a little too much. He's like, I was very high, and I was like, what? Oh, I didn't know you could get very high from that. I can't wait to try it.
I've heard women having the experience.
And there are, of course, anal suppositories for back pain and menstrual cramps. There's the whole thing. And so I, from a sexual perspective, it's different from a pain relieving perspective. And my own experience is, so many people report positive stuff. So I feel like if it works, use it.
Are you talking about
the cannabis lubes? If it works, go for it. But for me personally, I haven't got a ton of success. But I still support it in idea because I just want people to be touching their stuff. Yeah.
Touching their stuff. So, what kind of feedback do you get from like a sex class, a sex work class, sex coaching? What do people say? What kind of stuff have you heard over the years? I presume you've been doing this for 8 years.
Yeah, also 8 years. Yeah, you're right. So I was going to be like a sex therapist or a sex, professor. I was studying sexuality academically.
Are you an academic?
Yeah, I was an academic.
How did I have this suspicion? What was your area of study?
Sexuality. Yeah.
Were you like a big reader of Esther Perel also?
Yes. Okay. Yes. So yeah, so I thought I would be more on the teaching, writing side, but I just found the graduate school so dry. Of course, it wasn't sexy. And so I was like, I think it's time to shift directions and keep the sexuality stuff, what I thought was going to be just like a pet passion and become a yoga teacher. But now I found a way to kind of weave the two together in all these different ways. So that's really cool. I like that. And so over these 8 years, a lot of couples, I work with, single women, single men and couples of all orientations, but especially the couples, they often cry, one or both people cry because they see each other for the first time in a long time. They're really just there and present, and it's like a big deal. So that's just so rewarding to have people moved. Yeah, it's touching to me to have. So I think just reappreciating your partner, and you do your private yoga, regular hatha, whatever yoga you do it at home, and you got a great practice. But when you go to a studio, there is this little bit of I don't know if showing off is the right word, but the teacher might be looking at you. Others might be looking at you. So you're kind of on more your best behavior or something. You're not as sloppy with your form. So I think having me there as the sex coach, and we're not doing sex per se, but we're talking about sex issues and doing yoga to kind of facilitate the homework, which would be more X-rated. But having me there, they're kind of sort of seeing each other in a new way and more present and more vulnerable than I think they would be if they saw read a book or saw a video at home. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Are you more about sex or more about intimacy?
I would say intimacy, yeah, which can be, I hate the word foreplay actually, but it could be sort of foreplay for sex. Yeah, because intimacy is so valuable on its own. It's not an appetizer. It's a meal. But yeah, I coach people on their sexual issues. So I don't know if that would count as a sexual coach or not. But I'm not like a sexual surrogate or that kind of stuff. It's pants on, but
Pants on?
sex. Yeah.
Pants on. Got it. Got it. Okay, so people cry. People are appreciative. I thought people were very positive about the restorative class last night because afterwards they were gathering and talking. Right?
Yeah.
It's interesting that it causes such a, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say the word community because it's overused, but people really came together, right?
Oh, totally. And every
people
class,
love the plant.
Yes. Oh, God. There's so much
This
community
is what-
around the plant, right?
It's so
And
interesting.
Places
Do you
to
think
get high
it's because it's been
together.
banned for so long? Or do you think it's a natural cultivator of intimacy and connection?
Both. Yes, exactly. No, both. Exactly. Yeah. If people just love to be able to get together and smoke one, or be high together and unashamedly high.
And my friend was here last night, and people were smoking and vaporizing, but he said, I really like the smell of many joints being passed. I like the way it infuses the room. I think it's a very pleasant smell.
Yeah.
And he thought it really added to the vibe.
Yeah.
And how people who are not cannabists would find it very, very sort of untasteful or distasteful. And he said to me, but I remember the first time I tried whiskey. It was really nasty. First time I smoked a cigarette, I didn't like that either.
Coffee,
and
dark chocolate.
And then I got a taste for all of those
Yeah.
things. So maybe cannabis is just another one, and I sort of think it's true.
Yeah. A more refined taste that you develop.
It's a taste that's developed. It's not a taste it's not a smell that initially strikes you as harmonious or fantastic.
Yeah,
right?
totally. Those subtle nuances and stuff. I don't think a lot of first timers are.
No,
are
most people
necessarily-
don't like it. Some people, that stinks.
Yeah, skunky or something,
Yeah. But I think it is a cultivated awareness.
Yeah. So then the yoga and the mindfulness, the sensuality cultivation feeds into the cannabis experience.
I thought so.
And then the cannabis feeds into the yoga experience symbiotically.
Yoga's all about the here and now, right? In the moment, being in the moment. And I think cannabis it sort of extends time, right? It has that funny time stretching quality, right? I didn't
Totally,
know,
yeah.
Some moments in your classes, I didn't know if it was a minute, an hour. I didn't know how long I was on that mat.
Totally. Yeah, no, I remember at the end one guy, when I, slowly get us to all roll up at the end with our eyes closed, one student was saying he didn't know if he was facing the front of the room or he just lost complete orientation of time and space.
That's very interesting.
So it is like a psychedelic or, a shamanic tool in these ways, when you
think
go
it can
deep,
be, yeah.
in that deep, dark, meditative, restorative class, tapping into very deep parasympathetic nervous system, unlike a faster moving vinyasa where there is still some sympathetic happening. So we're going real, deeper than we may maybe ever go. So many people, this is their weekly self-care that.
I felt, yes, why am I not doing this every week?
Right, yeah.
Because I can't go on vacation every week. I can't.
Right.
There's a lot of things I can't do to sort of lose the day. But your class, it was 2.5 hours, 3 hours all told, I think, in and out. It really felt like a big separation. It almost felt like the weekend is beginning now.
Nice. Oh, I love that. That's great. Yeah. No, we said this last night in class too. That self-care is healthcare. Taking time to relax and to move your body in novel ways that it doesn't get, the joint configurations that it doesn't get in the day-to-day. This is, so important to longevity and being able to move well as we age, and feel good as we live,
age.
Let's feel as good and healthy as possible.
As we move through the world.
Right.
So is Ganja Yoga going to be a franchise? Is it going to be one coming to New York soon?
I would love that. I mean, I hadn't planned it until, I was just doing my thing, almost more of an artist, yoga teacher offering my passion to the world. But then when HarperCollins, I don't know if you're aware, they approached me to write the book.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that was a complete
Fantastic.
out of nowhere knock from the
I
universe.
really enjoyed your book, I have to say. I was deeply skeptical.
Why?
Just because, a lot of shit's been written about yoga and a lot of shit's been written about cannabis. And when you put them together, the possibilities for a lot more shit are very, very possible.
Right.
But I thought you brought a great sort of, historical purview, and there were interesting thoughts. I love that you included playlists.
Oh, cool.
I thought that was great.
Awesome.
No, I got some good
neat.
musical tips out of it. I find musical discovery always helpful, and sometimes you're in a yoga mood, but you don't want to do yoga. You just want to hear it or feel it. And I like listening to a playlist like that.
Right. That's cool.
No, I got a lot out of it.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. That's really cool. So, but
So they approached you.
Yeah, they approached me. So, that sort of just changed the direction. I had been doing classes, partner yoga work and Ganja Yoga retreats before that. But then now with the book, I've had some new, proposals and new potential expansions. So it's all really exciting. I mean, I have a retreat coming up at the end of September.
Where?
Near Yosemite. So we attract people from either LA, San Francisco. But last one we did in April, we had people from out of state. We had someone from the state of Georgia, someone from the country of Chile came all the way. And isn't that so crazy now with Prop 64, you just have to be 21. So my Ganja Yoga classes, I've had people from like United Arab Emirates.
Get out of here.
Where,
Really?
a little tiny flake of weed in your shoe will get you
For
put
life.
in. Yes. So this is a guy who's like, I want to try weed. I'm going to go to California. And not only, this is where I can get weed and enjoy it. Is that so
crazy?
So anyway, franchise sounds awesome. I'm going to be offering a Ganja Yoga teacher training as the first part
You're
of my next plan. It'll be in San Francisco, yeah, and then potentially online moving forward so that I can help to, if people want, there's lots of people who are already doing cannabis-enhanced yoga, whether inspired by me or just they came to it on their own, or, some of them I know and I've consulted with, and I support as many as I can through social media, but if people want to know sort of my methodology and, some of the tips and stuff I've got over these 8 years, then that'll be sort of my next project.
You're about to become a brand.
I guess so, yeah.
So.
I went from being this kind of hippie thing to, a bit more of a brand. So I
hope
have.
you enjoy it.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding? I'm riding the wave.
You should be. You should be. I think it's, there's a lot of interesting thing happening in the world of weed. Every time I come to San Francisco, I'm always blown away. I met a guy the other day who's created a hydroponic system for growing, but without water.
Oh, right on.
You just missed.
Oh, wow.
I know. And if you think about places like California
exactly.
or
Totally.
almost all of Africa where there is no water, this is an extraordinary development.
Right.
And you can do it not only with cannabis, with all sorts of
Oh, wow.
everything.
Well, yeah, you could go buy a beautiful property in Joshua Tree and still have your beautiful garden and, whatever you need.
So there's so many interesting developments happening, not only in the tech or in the agricultural side, but culturally as well. And I think your class was one of the highlights of my time this time to California. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
How do we find you?
The Ganja Yoga. So someone already took Ganja Yoga website. So it's the Ganja Yoga or the Ganja Yoga is the best way to find.
.com?
Yeah, .com or Ganja Yoga on Instagram.
Okay, very good.
That's
Great.
it.
And the book is Ganja Yoga?
Yes.
And we'll be hearing more from you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Dee. That was really interesting, Dee, and I want to thank you. And for anybody else who's interested in this, I want to remind you, you can get a copy of her book. It's called Ganja Yoga, published by Harper One. Came out this year. I think it's worth the $20 investment. So if you want to practice that, go for it. And if not, there's other ways of using cannabis to relax also. We'll be exploring them in some future episodes. Anything else, Matthew, on your end?
Well, I think just a special moment to think back to our last episode and thank Dr. Chin again for joining us live at the Alchemist Kitchen.
To talk about CBD.
Yeah, to talk about CBD, but also to participate in the live experience. And I think that we're looking ahead at the opportunity to do more of those.
Yeah, I love doing those live ones, and I think the audience loved it too.
Yeah, it was really great, right?
Yeah,
we had a really good number of people, probably somewhere around 40 people turning in live, over 200 that logged on from Facebook to join us, and we're flattered, honestly, to know that you guys are out there and to know that you're listening and participating with the show in that way. We really appreciate it. And so all I would say is, if you would like to see us do that kind of thing again, if you would like to participate in something like that in the future, to reach out to us. bravenewweedcast@gmail.com. We're always listening.
Or if you have any questions that we can answer, we can always get the smartest people in the cannabis world to talk to us, and we'd like to be that resource for you.
Yeah, so please reach out, sound off, let us know what you're into, what you want to hear out of Brave New Weed, and we'll do everything we can to bring it to you.
And final self-promotion, which is if you guys are liking this and want to support us on Patreon, you can do so for as little as $1 a month, and it means a lot to us. It'll really help us keep going and growing.
Absolutely. Patreon.com/bravenewweed. There's a whole tier list of rewards and benefits and bonuses that we're offering. Everything from copies of your book, Joe, to attendance in our live events like we did at the Alchemist Kitchen. So please visit the Patreon and sound off. We really want to hear from you.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks for listening to the Brave New Weed podcast. This episode and all future episodes are made possible by amazing listeners like yourself. If you like what you've heard, we encourage you to show your support by giving $1 a month for special access and rewards on patreon.com/bravenewweed. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram via @bravenewweed. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/bravenewweed. And remember, you can always find more information about us or information discussed in each episode by pointing your favorite browser to bravenewweed.com.